Eric. Thank you so much for participating in this interview. The City Biz audience, I think, is going to be very excited about the important work you do. And to kick things off, maybe just give a little rundown of what Veterans for All Voters is all about, how you became involved, what your mission is, and that'd be a great way to kick it off.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, David. Veterans for All Voters is a national mission we're building with over 300 veteran leaders in 47 states, working on very specific election reforms. These are structural reforms that we think will get us to better, more functional government and more accountable politicians through open and competitive elections.
Well, that sounds great. I guess the obvious next question is why veterans? Are you a veteran? And what do you think the specific talents or orientation of veterans is that might help the mission that you're trying to work on?
Yes, so I'm a proud Navy veteran. I served from 1997 to 2005 as a naval flight officer. I flew on and off of aircraft carriers and worked with just some incredible people. One of the beautiful things about the military is it truly is a melting pot and a reflection of America. And you come together for a mission that's much bigger than anyone's small identities, such as their partisan identity. And that sense of mission and purpose is what veterans bring to bear in just about everything they do. Generally speaking, for better or for worse, veterans are some of America's most trusted messengers. Veterans participate in civic engagement and nonprofits at a higher level than our civilian peers, and they give more than our civilian peers. And we want veterans to use their trusted voice in a nonpartisan way to fix our primary problem, our broken political system and the partisan process that is just driving this country apart.
So when you say fix the system, you have some examples of two or three particular aspects of our democracy that you and the other veterans feel needs fixing?
Absolutely. So the biggest banner or billboard right now is over 65% of Americans do not want a rematch of 2020 when it comes to the presidential election. And yet, that's exactly where we're headed. And I don't know what could be a clearer sign of this is a systems level failure. If that many Americans don't want this outcome, and yet that's where we're heading, what are the systems, the structural stupidity that's getting us to these terrible outcomes? And the number one thing is partisan primary elections. We at Veterans for All Voters, I'm one of the close to 60% of veterans who's a lifelong independent. I've never joined either major political party. And we just want a full voice in our elections. We want to be able to fully participate in our public elections that we pay for with our taxpayer dollars. And we want our preferred candidates to be able to compete on a level playing field. And that's what we're fighting for, David. We are not there yet, but we're making great progress in states across the country.
Well, I wonder if you're running into the same dilemma that I'm running into as someone involved in the reform movement, the bridging movement, and I've been doing this for 12 years now. And I've always felt you needed long-term thinking. This is not going to happen overnight. Yet I'm running into a lot of people who realize and appreciate this long-term concept, but they're very, very worried about this upcoming election in November. Have you shifted your strategy at all? Are you mixing more short-term with long-term thinking? And if you're bringing short-term thinking into it, how might that come to play?
So we are intentionally focused exclusively on the long game. And I realize for some folks that might not be a satisfying answer. We are, and one of the big reasons is we are a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit. So we cannot get involved. We don't support or oppose political candidates at all. We only advocate for structural reforms. And I think part of the problem, David, is the short-term circus and the short-term political entertainment industry's focus on the horse race is a huge part of the problem, because it diverts so much attention and energy and resources away from the real problems, which are structural. And I think more and more Americans are waking up to the fact that we are being gaslit by both of our major parties, that neither one of them has real solutions to change the terrible outcomes we're getting in Congress, because they're really about consolidating their own power and control at the expense of the American people.
Interesting. Well, I do know something about an endeavor you're involved in, which speaks to this quote unquote movement, the reform movement. And I guess there's some debate whether it's a movement or not. But I believe you're involved with something with a sister organization of the Bridge Alliance, Citizen Connect, and that's an amplification program which believes in the philosophy that as important as the work you're doing, your one organization, as important as other single organizations, the work they're doing is, that there needs to be some working together. You know, if we work together, we'll all be more powerful. Could you speak to that a little, and any discoveries you've made in working with other organizations?
Sure. Citizen Connect is fantastic. It's an incredible resource and platform to really elevate this entire ecosystem of effort. As you said, David, Veterans for All Voters, we are one organization in a much larger reform ecosystem, pro-democracy, civic bridge building ecosystem. And the reason we launched, David, is, there's 40 to 50,000 veteran service organizations. There's somewhere around 11,000 pro-democracy, civic bridge building reform organizations. There wasn't anyone bringing those two worlds together in a really intentional way, which is why we launched. But we really enjoy elevating this entire ecosystem and all the good work that so many of our national, state, and local partners are doing all over the country.
Well, you should be applauded for your good work and your optimism. Uh, so many Americans are so fatalistic about the direction of our country. So we need people who are optimistic and believe that if we all put some effort in, that our democracy certainly can improve and rise to the challenges. So, speaking of optimism, do you have any? If you would think about the last year of your work with Veterans for All Voters, is there one or two stories that you would say, wow, that's a particular success story that might excite some of our viewers to become involved and realize that change can happen?
There's a number of things that give me real optimism, David. When you look at the next generation, the younger generations, they are far less partisan than my generation and older generations. 61% of younger folks ages 18 to 24 do not identify as a Republican or a Democrat, and they want to get involved. There's this part of the way that we see people getting gaslit is, well, we just need more people to turn out to vote. Yes, absolutely. Get out and vote. But why are young people not getting out to vote? It's because they don't like the choices. They don't see real competition. They don't see people, frankly, that they're excited about running for office. And that's a systematic failure. But on the positive side, we see younger veterans getting involved at just a tremendous level. One story would be Marine Corps veteran Mike Escobar in Nevada got involved with our campaign there for ballot question 3 to bring the Alaska election model to Nevada. And Mike, this is his first time getting involved politically. He's an independent, nonpartisan voter in Nevada. He recorded the number one most viewed 15-second commercial in both Spanish and English for the successful campaign in 2022. And that's just one of, I could go on and on about our veteran volunteer leaders, and Henry Rowland in Connecticut and Kevin Miller in Wisconsin and Tiana in Maryland. There's just so many incredible people getting involved, taking action, because veterans want to continue serving their country. They want to continue honoring their oath, and they don't want to be forced to do that as partisan actors. So we're giving them a platform to step out, to be agents of change, unifiers, and make some meaningful progress for the good of this country.
And how did you reach these people originally? Did they contact you? Did you contact them? Did you know someone that they knew? How's that process work?
It's a lot of good old fashioned networking. I'm a huge fan and very active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been incredibly helpful. It's how I met my co founder, Dan Biga, who introduced me to our other co founder, Todd Connor. Um, and then Todd had started a national network called Bunker Labs about 9 years ago to help anyone who's military connected start new businesses. And Todd has a really fantastic network. He's part of the George W. Bush Institute, the Presidential Leader Scholars Program. So many of our initial volunteers come from our own networks, and then just word of mouth, veterans spreading the word to other veterans, and more people are getting involved every single day.
And then volunteer. I mean, is it all levels of involvement? Can someone who only has an hour a week become involved, and some maybe have more time and more passion to have 10 hours a week? How's that work?
Yes. So we say to all of our volunteers, no heavy lifting is required because we don't want to scare people away. We want them to affiliate with us, come on a learning journey with us. And to your point, David, some of our volunteers have a lot of bandwidth and a lot of time to give, and others don't have hardly any at all. But when we work with our in-state and local partners, when we are given very clear calls to action, such as can you write an op-ed in this particular paper in Louisiana this week, we can help make that happen. Or can you submit testimony in Louisiana against this bill that to close primaries? We can make that happen with our veteran leaders, and it's just it's really inspiring to me, David, because people are doing this without pay, and they're taking time out of their schedule and with their families and their businesses because they believe in the cause and the mission. They think this is the right mission at the right time.
Now, would I be correct in assuming that most of the reforms you're working on, uh, whether it's open primaries or another particular reform you're working on, that most of the work is on the local level or is on a state level, national? Tell me a little about how that works.
Yes. So thanks to our federalist system, almost all of our work is on the state and local level. And we have hundreds of in-state and local partners that we bring our veterans in. We get them trained up on our platform. We give them tools and resources. But the number one thing we ask them to do is get embedded with your local reform organization. In Missouri here, I got my start with Show Me Integrity, working on a nonpartisan approval campaign here in the city of St. Louis. And I'm still very connected with local reform efforts here in St. Louis and Missouri. And we're building this into a national constituent based organization to really help be a force multiplier for the reform movement.
Fascinating. Well, I'm sure the growth will continue as much as I know about you and your enthusiasm and your strategy. It's not just enthusiasm; you have to have a game plan and a strategy to make it work. I am curious about one thing about you personally, as a young man, and whether it was high school or college or in the military. Was there something in your early life that you think, as you look back, led you to this type of work? I mean, are you naturally a a person who wants to build bridges and a person who wants to get away from partisanship and closed-mindedness? Do you have any reflections on the journey you've taken?
Yes, it's in my family's DNA. My grandfather, the late Dr. Bronner, his goal was to unite spaceship Earth, and that was the terminology he used. And he printed his message on soap labels, and it's now the number one selling soap in the world. So that's part of it. But for me, I caught the political bug at a young age, and for many different reasons, I still want to run for public office, hopefully national office one day. I will only do that as an independent and once we have a level playing field where independents compete with the same rules and the same process as partisans. And that's a big reason why I'm doing the work is as a kid, I would watch conventions, presidential conventions, both parties from beginning to end. My co-founder, Todd Connor, has been to two Democratic presidential conventions and two Republican conventions. There's a lot of us who want to serve, but we don't want to be forced into the partisan extremes in order to compete. And I'm one of those people.
Well, I have great optimism for your success. And maybe a closing thought would be if 5 years from now we have another interview and a lot of the reforms you advocate come to pass, how do you think, how would you tell Americans how this will positively impact on their day-to-day lives? I mean, why does it matter to the everyday American?
Why does it matter? Absolutely. So the dysfunction in our Congress is a threat to all Americans. It's a national security threat that we didn't have a Speaker of the House for 3 weeks. It's a threat to our country when Congress just can't get the simple business of passing a budget, or other basic legislation can't even get passed because Congress is so dysfunctional. So the future state, once 5 states adopt the Alaska election model with open primaries, there will be 10 US senators who are free to act like reasonable adults, and they will be rewarded for that. They will be rewarded for bipartisan problem solving, because that's what an open primary with majority choice voting methods does. So that's the future, and how it connects is we're getting terrible results in Congress because the structures that are in place right now reward terrible behavior. And that's what we're trying to change. And we're going to do it one state at a time. There's almost 10 different states this year are looking to change their primary election rules. So it's not pie in the sky, David. We will get to 5 states by 2026, and we're going to get some better people elected who are free to be common sense problem solvers and be rewarded for that behavior.
Well, I'm confident with talented and enthusiastic leaders like yourself, the change will happen. So thank you so much. And hopefully, our listeners, the City Biz listeners, and the Fulcrum listeners will be inspired and become involved and realize that democracy is not a spectator sport, and we'll have many, many more citizens involved to make the change that we so badly need. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for this opportunity.